So we are back with a new set of panelists. It's time to talk mostly about process-based work, the process of making the show, the process of curating a show. So I'm first going to ask our panelists to introduce briefly their name, what they do, the work they have in the show if they have one. So if you could start.
I'm Andrew Marsh. I am Curator in Practice for BA Culture, Criticism and Curation, who aren't in this degree show. They're in degree show 2, the next one.
Elenor Turnbull, I'm BA Fine Art, and I've got like a process-based piece of performance art that's drawing on the floor.
I'm Charles Verni. I'm BA Fine Art. I've made a computer program that signs petitions on change.org under fake emails and names just upon a mouse click.
I'm Clarisse Fahrtmann and I'm a student, 3rd year on BA-CCC. Yes, that's it.
I'm Alex Schady and I'm the Programme Director for Art. The mic's fallen, does that matter?
Please be fine, I'm going to fix it real quick. Let's ignore me. Get things start talking.
So I want to start talking about the process that you guys have been through from kind of, I mean, not literally from the drawing board, but generally sort of your feelings of coming to completion. I know that your work is very much kind of time-based within the show, but I feel like you're drawing, aren't you?
Yeah.
But I feel like perhaps that's what the message is. And the process of the work is what you're showing, and likewise your kind of subscription method, which is ongoing. It's all very much to do with the time in which the show's on, and like.
In my case, for instance.
Sorry about the mic. Yeah.
In my case, for instance, the work sort of it manifests in sort of structural supports. It's kind of has a basis which is sort of semi-sculptural, but it's supported. So it's been a way of sort of working it into the room. Really, I mean, there's the work, and I've had to make it sort of. I don't really want to use the word like fit, but I had to make it sort of live within the space. And I mean, it's still revealing itself to me now. I mean, I think at the moment, right now, the internet connection's dropped on it. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it kind of makes me incredibly anxious and also sort of interested to see it sort of reveal itself. Some people just sort of sit and watch like a TV and just click away and just look at petitions about David Cameron.
Are they completely random petitions?
Yeah, there's 100 and it just picks them at random. Like they're just the most 100 recent ones. So a lot of them are like based on essentially like forthcoming Conservative Party policy.
Interesting.
So this panel is quite interesting because it's one of the panels where we have the last BA Fine Art student, and we can talk maybe about the other side of the process of art, like organization, curation. So if Alex, you could start, how is it to organize a show from your point of view? Because the last panel we had a lot of students being like, there's a willy inspectors and made us not be able to show dicks, stuff like that. So just give us your insight.
Well, there's a number of different sort of structures that operate when a show is of this scale and is open to the public. The first is how you get 170 BA students, a further 75 MA students to fit into the space we have, and how you get that to happen across such a short period of time. And so initially what you have to do is just group the students, and that's done by the staff, and we're doing that hopefully sympathetically in terms of what the students need. So I need a dark space, I need a corner, I need a wall, but also in terms of works that we think will work well together. So we're putting people together who we think will form a good cluster. And then once we have a cluster, we get the students in conversations with the students with staff to put together and to curate the exhibition. So what we're really aiming for is that the show should not be a series of individual solo shows, but a curated group exhibition, and hopefully that's what happens through that clustering. In terms of the other infrastructures that are at play, yes, health and safety is at play, yes, work that's open to the public is always going to have an issue if, for example, it shows pornography. Certain people will not be allowed to see that because the law determines that we're not allowed to do that. But I think that's a secondary set of concerns that I have to worry about, that the students hopefully don't have to worry about too much. We worry about it and make sure that we put mechanisms in place to allow the students to do what they want, but we don't say that from the outset, you can't do this or you won't be able to do that. Rather, you tell us what you're doing and we tell you how we might go about putting measures in place to allow that to happen in a safe and legal way. That's hopefully how we do it.
So another thing that intrigued us with the way the show is set up is that it's kind of like self-curated by the students. So as opposed to your practices, which I guess are more curation-based or more directed in the curation, is this something you run into quite often, like shows that are completely self-curated? So what's your take on that?
Our course at CCC, the students curate a show which is their work, so they're curating work of other students. So they have this opportunity to curate a final exhibition. But what they're showing is their curatorial practice rather than work, specific work. So they have that chance to kind of showcase their ability to work with artists, create a symposium, events, so on and so forth. So they're kind of showing that side of their practice. Degree shows are unique in a large respect, right? I mean, they're one of the few occasions where curatorially you can't say that someone isn't in the exhibition. They're doing their degree, they're here, they have the right to show their work. So how do you then negotiate that? And I think Alex, rightly said, well, it's about trying to listen to the students and try and hear what they're saying, and then try from that to curate something as you can, as best you can in that respect. But you're not going to create an overarching kind of theme or kind of construct, because how do you do that with 170 students? So it's a very unique experience, one which I'm not sure I've encountered anywhere else. It's very specific.
And also one that's really worth holding on to, that democracy of every single student will get a chance to show their work, no matter how late they come to the process. And there were certain students who perhaps weren't as involved early on as others, or how difficult or slight the practice might be. We will hold that space open for that student, and that's absolutely crucial. And partly what that teaches students is the art of good curation, because when you're faced with those challenges, you have to rely on curatorial decisions to make it work. You can't just say, well, there's 10 really good pieces of work that I've selected that I'm really happy with, and therefore it's going to be brilliant. You have to say, okay, there's a range of works here, some of which I have real empathy with, others that seem at odds with my particular version of what I'm making. How do I, as a student, bring those together in a way that's going to hold the space? And I think when that works well, you get so much more for your work, and you learn so much about your own work and other people's work in that context, I think.
So from your point of view as students, how did you go to curate your own work, curate other people's work, negotiate?
I think for my one, it's like a sort of maybe strange example, because like I said, had to sort of almost not to say that the process is wholly immaterial. I had to properly sort of materialise what was in the space. I mean, the work essentially is a series of files on a computer and a monitor. So it was a way of sort of materialising it within this kind of space, surrounded by all different objects. It was, I don't know, it was strange, but it's.
Was that a process that happened before or after you were clustered?
It was a process I thought about a lot before I was clustered, but it was a process that really came into being during clustering.
Why do you feel like you want to use this word fit? Fit in the space?
I'm not sure. I think it's because everything about a lot of things about the work are purpose built, so to speak. They're sort of bound together. They're not meant to be permanent. They're just containers, so to speak.
Okay.
But I think there's something really crucial there actually, and your work is a really good example of it. That when there are two different processes at work often with the work. There's what you do in the studio and what you do in advance, and what you do once the work finds its space. And actually for both of you, and perhaps because you have this sort of process-driven influence to your work, it has to be responsive then to the site it's located at. And what you're often trying to tell each other when you're putting that work together is, this isn't my chance to bring an object and make it look pretty in the space or hang it in the right place. This is my chance to continue making. The act of bringing it into that space and fitting it in that space is still the making process. It's still me making work.
And actually for both of your work, because I literally just saw it, it's about that notion of it isn't activated in a sense until the audience activates it. So it doesn't become the work until it's engaged with by an audience. Then
it's very performative in the way that I feel that a lot of what I sort of do is in that it's like a sort of this kind of strange performance in that it tries as much as it can to situate itself within the site of its examination, so that it's not performing the labour, it's actually sort of doing it, but through its framing comes into sort of some sort of performance.
So
I've sort of been working with the idea of the performance of materials as well. So it's more like the materials that dictate what happens in the space. So.
And the restriction for those as well.
Did the space work in the other way? Did you find that restricted your use of materials? Like, because it's so kind of, I mean, it's a process that takes place as you're there, sort of thing. Like,
What do you mean?
like when you were setting up your piece, did you feel as though the space was restricting on the materials in any way?
Not really, because usually I set up a mechanism that will restrict something, but in that restriction, the act of me doing it is more like, you know, an ideas-based thing. So like it's more like a physical manifestation of my thoughts in a way.
Yeah.
So it's
which relies
expansion.
on the input.
Yeah. From restriction.
So to close this short panel, and maybe another point of view. So Clarisse, you're not part of the show. You're a curation student.
Yes.
How do you feel about when you go into a show like this, where everything is self-curated? Is it something you can take from it, like a different experience? Just tell your thoughts on it.
Well, definitely. I think it's always interesting to see, because you've been saying people are allocated a space and it's not about making it pretty and fit everything in there, but a lot of students I've been talking to were saying they still want to make fit, you know, have those 10 works they really like fit into the space, and it's interesting to talk to them and see how they've kind of managed to take this corner and make something out of it, even if the space allocated is usually quite small, except for the students who are on the streets. I mean, the works are almost touching each other, which is also something really interesting that you see in degree shows. You don't look at one work, you look at 4 or 5 works at a time. So I think that's quite an interesting point of view as well, to kind of have to like deal with different perspectives at once, which is something you don't get elsewhere.
And just quantities of people out there, like just standing at the top of the building this evening, like so many floor-based works, and like there's markings kind of on the floor, but yeah,
especially
the movement of the audience.
at CSM, because if you go at the Slade degree show, for example, there's only 25 students showing, so they have half a room for themselves. So it's
Our degree show is obviously much better.
Oh.
I don't think it's about that. It's about different.
But also it's about, there's a particular challenge in that I think is a really exciting, and I think what's interesting about that challenge is it seems like a very contemporary challenge.
London is really small.
Yeah,
room
space.
to live.
Population.
But also the spaces,
crowded.
you know, we're all going to be showing in are much more likely to be spaces in which learning how to show work on top of each other and make that something positive rather than a deficit is crucial. So I think it's really potentially exciting when students, and you're right, sometimes they're doing something different, but when that works, it's so exciting to think, oh, I'm not expecting the audience to have a singular moment with my artwork, but rather I'm expecting the audience to see my work in relation to that work, in relation to the architecture, in relation to that other work there. And I think that's when that hums, it's a real hum.
And actually there are some genuine relationships that are established for themselves that you can walk through physically and feel like you're linked to all these different communicating works, which is something that you wouldn't get if everyone had half a room.
I really regret to cutting this amazing conversation. We're kind of running out of time, so we're going to end on this quite exciting note. So I think we can thank all the panelists, and especially Alex Schady, who really made the show come together. So round of applause for everybody. Thank you all, and we look forward to see your work in the street or where it's located.